Okay, I'd like to call the May 13th Board of Education meeting to order. We have 6 board members present, and I would entertain an adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Barb, is yours popping up for you? Okay, you want to just raise a hand? Or yeah. Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you. That brings us to item 3A, public comments. Public comments will be allowed for a duration of 3 minutes per speaker to be timed by the board clerk, and speakers must sign up in person for public comment by 1 p.m. the day of the board meeting. Public comment by email or remote may not be accepted. Those giving public comment may not approach the board or move past the podium. No handouts will be allowed, but such materials may be emailed in advance to the board clerk for distribution to the board. Do we have any public comments?
We do. Nathan Writing, please come forward.
Okay, all right. Thanks. Well, good evening, school board members and Superintendent McGee. At the last school board meeting, a school board member said he likes public comment, so I thought I would oblige. This school year, as cost containment discussions showed a likelihood that the school's child care program, school district's child care program would end, a child care sustainability team was put together hoping to find ways to maintain the child care program in the schools. It included the child care director, providers, assistant superintendent of business operations, and parents. I was not a part of this team, but I would receive updates on their work. They hoped to procure an early childhood block grant that would help with funding the child care through the end of the 2026-2027 school year. The superintendent recommended that if the grant was not received, the child care program would go through December, so that would allow families to find ways to get some daycare elsewhere. So we appreciate that. Some ideas that were also shared for program sustainability included adjustments to infant, toddler, preschool aged, weekly rates, and limiting supply costs by utilizing shared resources, donations, and fundraising. On April 7th, I was notified that rates would go up for the 2026-2027 school year. I was asked to verify if I would still like my child in child care for the next school year with those changes. That's fine. Yes, I would. I'd already been informed that these changes were in the recommendations for trying to keep daycare open, so yeah, no problem. Then on April 9th, I was notified that the application for the block grant was not funded for this cycle, thus the child care program would officially close in December. It was denied before April 7th. I just hadn't heard yet. When I talked with other parents about this sad news, those that were on the sustainability team, they said that in their discussions, the rates would have been increased only if the grant was awarded and we had childcare for the full year. So I'm willing to pay the increased rate for childcare, but I just was curious why, if we're closing in a few months, why are we raising the rate and going against the team recommendations? And on a related note, we parents were invited in January to participate in a fundraising opportunity with Krispy Kreme to buy crafting supplies for our 4 childcare locations. I'm not sure how much we raised, but it was a good amount. Before Mother's Day, our providers reached out and asked if we had certain supplies to make craft, and I said, well, why don't you reach into those funds from the fundraiser to help out with those costs. So child care providers shared that when they reached out to their leadership, they didn't know what had happened to those funds. So I was just wondering what had happened to the money that my friends and family helped raise for those crafts for my child. And the providers spent their own money to make those crafts. I'm about out of time. Well, the next time that the district, yeah, I'm out of time. Okay. All right. Well.
And just to clarify, I want everybody to know that, this is stressful, I think, to get up and do public speaking. So we do appreciate you coming, and that you can always email the board. And it gives you the ability just to lay everything out, and there's no time limit, and that. We'll read it, but I just want to,
We'll listen to you.
yeah. So just that you don't have to come up here, and but if you want to, great. But if you're not a fan of that, then you can do that, and you're not going to be cut off. So thank you. Okay, that's going to bring us to item 4, the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are those for which the board has received information in advance and have been thoroughly reviewed. Approval of the items may be made by a single motion, second, and majority vote with no separate discussion of any item listed. Should a member of the board desire to discuss any item at their request, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Oh, mine's so slow.
Thank you. That's going to bring us to item 6A, 2025-2026, Building Needs Assessment.
Dr. Cargill is going to come up and share some information from our latest building needs assessment. We're scheduled to bring this to you a little earlier in the year, but with all the other big decisions that were going on late winter and early spring, this one kind of got pushed back. So, but it's still very important information for you to hear.
Thank you for letting me present this tonight. I'm excited about doing that. I just want to share a brief overview of the results of the needs assessment and some themes. I did a little bit different this year, but just as a reminder, each year the Board of Education looks at the needs assessment. And the needs assessment is compiled by the building principals with help of their site councils and their building leadership team. And then the teaching and learning team in the past has taken those needs assessments and we've put them onto a presentation by school and shared that out with you. And that's on there if you want to see it. I think it's the last one there, the presentation. We're actually not going to go over that tonight because we took it a step further this year. We actually went in and we themed them based on some themes. So hopefully that'll help us as we move forward with both our fiscal planning for 26-27 and also our strategic planning moving forward. So I just I made some tables and I went through the work that the teaching and learning team had done and also the needs assessment. And I categorized things and put some summary pieces in there. And then I went through that and I kind of started to color code. My initial intent was to color code a lot, and then I started running out of colors and it got really busy. So I did a lot and I identified some of the bigger areas of themes. And then based on that, I went down to page 4 and I kind of gave you an overall theme of some needs. So when you think about what the principals told us, what the schools told us, we need to work on our core. And we also need to work on our tiers. There's a clear need for a social studies adoption. I think every school said that. And there's also a little bit of music in there too. The music teachers would like to have some new things as well. There's also a need for support for our ESL kids and our ELL learners, our NAS kids, children's instruction, things like that, and bilingual needs. So we have a lot of needs for students or ELs. We also have staffing needs, like we're short on paraprofessionals. Principals mentioned instructional strategists, ESL strategists, and support for students with disabilities. They also talk a lot about behavior and trauma, social emotional needs. Behavior came up, student mental health, things like that. Need for the counselors and SEL programs across the district. Student attendance and chronic absenteeism was mentioned a lot across the board. Family engagement was mentioned as a theme almost in every school. There was some talk about extended learning time. You know, when we remember back to COVID days, we had that extended learning, that touring time we had. And then they even mentioned some summer school. Wanted to go back to that a little bit. Then there was some needs with HVAC and humidity issues. I know for one of those was at Walnut with our library. there, had a lot of humidity issues there. And then some general safety concerns mentioned, like sidewalks, playgrounds needed repair, they were old, water temperature, things like that. And then just general maintenance, like doors not working, needing to be maintained, and roofs and carpet replacement. So those are some of the general just themes of needs that came across. Before we go to the next part, were there any questions about those that I can maybe try to answer a little bit? No, there's not. Okay, well, if there is, we can stop and talk about those a little bit. The next table started talking about barriers and then some solutions to remove the barriers. And if you look down that first column of barriers, I try to take some of the needs and color code them down to this that are identified as barriers of things that are keeping us from being proficient on the state assessment. So you'll see there's some things like chronic absenteeism there, extended learning time is there, food insecurity is there, the social emotional needs are there, things like that. So if you keep going on down there, you'll see I kind of theme that first column. Again, I'm matching up to the needs a little bit. And if you go to slide 8, you'll kind of see some overall themes. So when you think about the barriers, some things that the principals said are keeping our kids from being proficient would be attendance and chronic absenteeism. They're not in school to learn. Support for ELs and student with disabilities is increasing. We're seeing more of those. The social emotional behavior needs is a barrier. Kindergarten readiness is a barrier. We're seeing a skill gap in reading and math, staffing shortages, family involvement, and again, you'll see limited extended learning time. So you'll see a lot of those needs that were in the first table also showing up as barriers. And then the last part of that table dealt with some themes or things we need to do or some solutions to remove the barriers. And the first one there deals with increasing staff capacity to meet the growing needs of our learners. We have a lot of diverse needs in our schools with behavior and student special needs, attendance, SEL, ELL, non-English speakers, things like that. We need to work on our coherence and our alignment of our curriculum. That goes back to that core and tiered support items. Target support, that would be our tiers again. We have got to work on our family engagement, get families into our schools and more engaged. There's been a lot of talk about the expanding learning time, more opportunities like after-school tutoring, summer school, things like that. More professional development on data and meeting diverse needs of our students, and then making sure that we have the funding in place to make these things sustainable. And overall, the theme for the amount of time, like last year and in the past, has been it's 5 or more years. It's kind of what they say it's going to take. So that's kind of where we landed on the needs assessment. If you spend some time with it, you may come up with some other things. But this is kind of what we came up with as a team on some of our needs. And that's really what I have. I just wanted to theme some things out for you, give you an idea of what we're going to work on, planning in terms of our fiscal and our strategic planning moving forward.
This will be good information for us as we're going to start looking at who we might want to work with to help facilitate strengthening our strategic planning and developing our next 5-year strategic plan. And this is good data that will be a part of that process because there are a lot of good goals and action items that can come out of this information.
Ryan, I had a question on, so one barrier you mentioned there is staffing shortages. Is that tend to be more support staff that you're identifying, or?
That's going to be something that's be interesting to kind of hammer out as we come out of cost containment. A lot of that dealt with para support, teachers' aides, making sure that we have enough staffing to cover our classes. There were just instructional strategists, making sure we have enough support for our ELs, things like that. Making sure we hire enough special education teachers. So I think it's specific to those areas.
When I was looking at this, I was really concerned about student attendance and the absenteeism because obviously if they aren't in school, anything else we do is not going to help. So, and I guess I was really shocked that it was at the elementary schools as well as at the middle and high school, because I know middle and high schoolers can get kind of strong-willed. But, man, finding a way to get those kids to school is going to be real important.
Yeah, and part of that at the elementaries is it's an adult problem because they depend on their parents getting them to school. At the high school, it becomes a student problem getting to school. And I know something we have planned for teaching and learning would be to have Patricia Reyes make a presentation on what she does to help with attendance. When school gets out, I'll run the chronic absenteeism data for you again and share that out at some point, so you can kind of see how we did. I think we're gonna do a little better this year. We've been gradually getting better. But you're right on. That is definitely something I think we need to focus on, is getting kids to school. And a lot of that also go back to family engagement as well. They kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah, and on that subject, I would just, enforce that. It's really important for our staff to do, and I'm sure that they are, but to make sure that when children are missing school, we're counting that attendance and we're forwarding it on to the Lyon County Attorney's Office so that they can do a truancy case, which for small children wouldn't mean you go on probation. They basically do the equivalent. It's not exactly precise, but the equivalent of a diversion. They call it family preservation services, because there's no point in putting a 10-year-old on probation if mom is not taking him to school or dad isn't, right? But I will say the one thing the county has always harped on for as long as I've been in the bar here is getting that information from the schools late, and then, having it not in time to intervene when school is in session, right? Because it doesn't really help you if we, file a truancy case in summer. And I know our staff are doing that, but I would just speak to it, that's important to make sure we pass along, because sometimes the issue is not something our staff can intervene and fix. It has to go up the chain.
They need that additional support, somebody else going to that house and checking in with that family. It'd be good.
It'd probably be good for us to, at some point over the next couple of months, to maybe have Patricia share a little bit about some of the work that she's done. She's doing a great job there, and I think it'd be good for the board, and I'd love to hear it too. To see what all's going on and all the things, because I know she's involved in some of those truancy cases and so on, and kind of holding hands through that process.
We had a lot of a real concerted effort. I believe it was last school year and the year before when we had that DCF grant.
Yes.
And I know we don't have that anymore. Correct? We don't have that position, right? Because we had someone who was really making some strides in that.
I think Patricia's making strides, and one of our presentations for teaching
On top of everything else she's doing though.
Yeah, she's doing a lot,
Yeah.
but we have her on our list to come and talk to you about attendance.
And Jeremy might know more about this, but I know Judge Jones is doing a family court kind of thing. We're one of 3 or 4 counties that has that program, trial program, to see how it works. And it sounds like a pretty good program if we could get our schools connected with him and that
what
system.
you would probably refer to as sort of a specialized, for lack of a better term, like the drug court program is an intensive service that meets regularly. And so it's kind of the same concept with family courts, because sometimes when you get everyone together, they actually have something similar now they call home court in the 5th Judicial District, but that's really for kids who are typically going to be in foster care, which may not be where you need someone who's just got truancy issues. So yeah, that's actually, I'm happy you mentioned that, because I had forgotten about that recently. That's going to be big for our community.
The only thing else I'll add is, I know we still always have capital outlay improvements and things that need to happen in our buildings, but back in the day, you're probably the only one that remembers, and maybe Art, was our performance-based budgeting that we used to do. And I remember when I was on for Walnut, when you looked at a building's needs assessment, it was almost exclusively related to the building itself, because our buildings were in such bad shape. And now that we've come so far since our bond project, it's nice to see that it's not where it was.
Yeah,
So at least we're making strides there, and I know our team's working really hard to keep everything great.
And something I was going to mention about those last 3 there was, I think if we talk to Corey and talk about his big old book, his Bob, I would think a lot of those things are in his Bob. They're on his list. They know they're happening. They know their work orders, and they're just getting to them. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of stuff up there that we can do as a district to focus on to help us plan for the future.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's going to bring us to, I'm trying to get back to my
Thank you for that.
meeting.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah,
Thank you. I
thanks.
appreciate it.
Oh, it's you again.
Yeah, I'm again. I got the next one too.
Okay, so 6B SDAC Connect Memorandum of Understanding for Virtual Programming.
Okay, so been talking about this quite a bit, trying to get it going, working through several different avenues. And tonight I wanted to, kind of our next step to continue to work on this is to get an agreement approved so we can start working with the team to help us put this into place. So tonight I'm requesting the board approval of our MOU with SDAC for the SDAC Connect program. SDAC Connect would provide USD253 with an additional pathway for students who are unable to be successful in traditional in-person setting. The Flint Hills virtual program would operate similar to Flint Hills Learning Center. We're couching it as a program. The state, when we get approved, is going to be a school. But we want to run it like we do Flint Hills Learning Center, where it's an opportunity, where we can place kids in there based on need. So it'll be similar to that. It'll run out of the high school. But I just want you to understand that this is not intended to be a broad choice school option for students who simply just want to be virtual. Our goal is to keep kids in the brick and mortar schools and provide them that education. But we do have a need for students who we're losing. When I say losing, I mean kids that have left us to go virtual, kids who have left us to go homeschool, things like that. We've lost those students. They still live in our community, and we're not helping them. So I think we can use some of this program to maybe attract some of those kids back to our schools. But we're also losing kids in a different way too. We're losing kids because they've made mistakes, like brought drugs to school, and they've been suspended. And then they make another mistake and they get suspended again, which means after they're suspended, they typically go to the school within the school program at the middle school, we call it Swiss, or they go to Flint Hills Learning Center and they work there. They mess up again. The next step is we suspend them. They can no longer go to our schools. They have to stay home. So the intent of this is to provide an opportunity for those kind of kids who make the mistake the second time, and we have no choice right now other than to say, you know what, you have to stay home. This gives us another option of providing that education. So to put some context to that, this year I had 2 students who I had that happen to, where I had to suspend them twice, and they could no longer come to our school. So then we had a burden of still trying to provide them education. And those were students that were younger. And then we also had some kids at older kids who made the mistake as well, and they had to be suspended from Flint Hills Learning Center. So they couldn't finish that program either. At that point, there was no option for them. But this would give them an option to say, okay, this didn't work. Now we're going to enroll you in this program so you can continue your education and work towards being a graduate. So those are kind of some context pieces for this. I just want you to understand that. And under this partnership, SDAC would provide the online curriculum. They'd provide staff. We would maintain the enrollment and student records, special education services, counseling support, and some funding responsibilities. SDAC would do a lot of communication with the families and also the school, but they would be taking the primary load of the staffing pieces. So there's not a lot of risk for us, and that's one reason why this is attractive to us, because it allows us to do this and feel like we're not taking a lot of risk. We could provide this, but we're not going to be providing staffing. If we were to do this in-house, meaning we would run it like Flint Hills Learning Center, but we would be virtual, we have to provide certified teachers for all the subjects that are taught. And as you know how much a teacher costs on average, that gets kind of expensive to be able to do. So I want you to understand that we're going to maintain ownership of the students, and we'll get some district funding out of this. But there will also be a chance that we'll gain some kids, like I mentioned a little bit ago, who are virtual, who are homeschooled, that may come back to us as they hear about what we're doing. And one thing about that is if we're going to do that and we want to take funding for those students, they're going to have to understand that they're going to have to meet an enrollment date. I can't tell you right now what that enrollment date is because we're still working through the handbook and the processes document. But in order to be counted for Emporia on September 20th, they have to attend 1 day prior and attend 1 day after, before October the 4th. So our date for their enrollment, in order for us to take funding, has to be sometime prior to September 20th to allow them to attend 1 full day. And then at that point, if we have a student who's full-time virtual, Emporia would get 35% of the funding, and SDAC would get 65% because they're providing the coursework and the staffing for it. Now, if we have a student who comes to us and they're with us face-to-face, virtual, or brick and mortar on September 20th, we take funding, then the student gets in trouble and has to go and be part of this program later on in the year, say November, December. Then if we do that, we transition one of our students who we've received funding for to this program, it's going to cost us about $912 of our funds to educate that student through the SDAC program. But we've already been funded, so we're just transferring that funding to SDAC as a way to provide that services. And so that's a quarter, so about $912 per quarter So I want you to understand that. Overall, this agreement allows the district to expand virtual learning opportunities while taking advantage of full staffing and operational demands of creating and managing a separate in-house virtual program. We won't have to create this. It would be created by SDAC. We would use it, and we would work with our kids. We would provide SPED services to them. We would maintain enrollment. We would communicate with the families too, as well as SDAC. I just think this is a good opportunity for us and allows us to do some things without a lot of risk. It also allows us a way to maybe attract some of the students who have left us for other programs like homeschool or other virtual programs. So I'm just asking for approval of this MOU so we can move forward with a handbook and process documents and try to get this ready to go for the start of school.
The key is you're going to be recommended by school officials to attend this school. You're not just going to go and enroll in this virtual program. And so, you know, we want to ensure that it's serving students that need this particular type of education and not, you know, I mean, there's always the risk, right? If you just open enrollment to virtual school and all of a sudden you lose 500 of your bricks and mortar kids to a virtual program, you're losing a lot of your funding when you do that. And we're not in a position to go that route. So this is really started out as being designed as another resource for students that just, you know, have run into roadblocks in the regular path to education that maybe all of us, or maybe some of us didn't go all those regular paths. You know, it's another place for them to land. It's not a good feeling, you know, when Ryan and I have to be involved in telling a student there are no more options for you here. And then once you lose them to a virtual program somewhere else, when you get to that point, they're probably not coming back because they've got a bad feeling about the way they've been treated at that point, even though they have some ownership in it. So this will just, we can at the end of the day say that we never abandoned a student. There was always an option for them. Now, if they get into this SDAC program and they completely are not doing it and not participating and doing what they should, then they're making a decision, right, to not participate. But it's not a decision that we've made to kind of turn our back on them.
I just have I like this idea, I really do. I just have I need a clarification. So we're going to try and run this program in our buildings, but I guess I'm also wondering if students who maybe have chosen homeschool will be able to do most of this program from their home.
Yeah, it's virtual, so it won't be on site. We won't have a room for it. It'll be, right now, when we think about who's going to operate it, like, for example, I'm listed as the virtual director. Been talking to Mr. Fisher and Mr. Burns about this quite a bit. And it may be that we need, one of the assistant principals are going to take on that responsibility of working with these students and these families. There has to be a counselor involved. But yeah, these students will work on this at home. Okay. Now, there are some benefits of that. If they're an Emporia student and they live in our community and they join this, they do have some access to us. I mean, they can come take a state assessments with us. We can try to get them into some on-site classes as well, because we know with homeschooling, being on-site with other students is important as well. So we can maybe do some of that if they live here. They can become part of us, and we can do kind of a hybrid model. That's one thing that when Mr. Schwartz and I met with SDAC and some KSD people, we talked about a hybrid model, doing maybe some of that down the road. So there's a lot of benefits that we could use to help students. And again, it goes back to, like Dr. McGee said, it's about providing us with additional opportunities to support kids, because our teachers are currently doing that, but they're having to make special lessons and do a lot of extra work to support kids who aren't out in their classroom.
Yeah, that explains why. I mean, you already said that. You said it in a different way, which also helped clarify. So thank you so much.
Yeah, I think it's good. My biggest concern with this is like what Dr. McGee said is our brick and mortar kids wanting to try to do this, and we need to understand that it's going to be run similar to Flint Hills Learning Center. We're going to recommend that you go there if you're one of our brick and mortar students.
I had a question about, so will there be, I feel like some classes need a book. Will they provide books for?
You know, that'd be a good question. A lot of the things that they're going to do through SDAC, they use Edmentum. I actually looked at Edmentum as a standalone for us. They also use Edgenuity. We already use Edgenuity. So a lot of them, the books that they're going to get are going to be ebooks and things like that. They do need, if there is a more physical book, they're going to be ebooks and videos through the online platform.
I noticed another requirement here is that we provide like transportation to 2 community engagement events. Can you tell me what?
So if we want to do a field trip, if our students in Emporia want to do a field trip, we would provide transportation to that. I don't have those are some things that I think as we go through this, we're going to have to clarify as they come up, but we would transport them like we would any other student of ours in Emporia.
Is there a tutoring component to the online piece?
So they have, SDAC has staff members who man this, who's teachers of record for this, so that student, like if I'm in the virtual program and I need help, I reach out to that teacher. So there is that teacher there for extra help. So there'll probably be tutoring, but there'd also be a certified staff member who can help you.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan, I know as you mentioned, the September 20th date, so if they were categorized as a virtual student, that would be part of it. But is this state reimbursement for virtual at a lesser rate than in-person type students?
So the big difference is that when you're virtual, you don't get weightings. So you just get the flat base aid per pupil.
Is it the same rate though as
Yeah, I believe
without the ratings?
the rate's not the same. The rate's less.
The
I know
rate
we
is-
also don't get weightings, so.
Okay, but it is a,
Mr. Schwartz said the rate's less. I don't have it in front of
Okay.
me. I
yeah,
don't recall.
but I was just thinking that there was some lesser amount.
I can get you those numbers, or
That's fine.
Mr. Schwartz will get you the numbers, but I know for a fact you don't get weightings on top, so it would be less
Okay.
funding.
Okay.
And along those same lines, I'm so glad you brought it up, Grant, was, so if they are an actual FTE, not a virtual, regular, I don't know what you want to call them, till like January, and then things go awry, do we have to pay anything back? Do we take a deduction? How does it affect, like, our obligation, I guess, regarding the funding?
So what would happen, if that student that you're talking about was with us on September 20th, so we receive funding for that student as a brick and mortar student, and that student in January gets in trouble and needs to go virtual, what we would do is we would pay SDAC $912, or we would just transfer the funding that we received for that student to SDAC. And the rate is right now it's $912 of what it would be. So you see there'd be H2 up there, H little 2.
Sure, but we wouldn't have to pay back
No.
anything, okay, okay,
Not to the state. We
Okay.
would just have to pay SDAC to educate
to
that
our
student.
right,
And-
and rightly so.
Yeah. We would just transfer funds that we receive to SDAC to pay for that student. And that's why it's also important. And there is another one up there too, like if you read 2I, it talks about if an incoming student was not funded and they have capacity, they'll take it. So that's another piece too that that SDAC will help us with as well. But if the student was funded, then we would transfer funds to educate that student at a prorated rate.
Well, I like this idea. I think it's going to help students who need it and could benefit from it. I do think that it's important that we keep them in the school if we can keep them in the school, so we don't create a permanent virtual school, in part because, I'll even tell you, working from home is fun, but at a certain point you need to be around people, especially when you're growing and developing, building relationships. But one question I had was, I know that the rate is going to be less for a virtual student that we get from the state. It doesn't count the weightings, but how are weightings affected if, let's say, that student is 50% remote, 50% in person? Does that change at all for weightings?
What they would be half their FTE would be their in-person brick and mortar, and the half would be the virtual piece. So it would be a combination of the two weightings, highways, I guess, or structures or roads. The state that would be a hybrid approach is what that would be. And I think we're going to, like across the state, I think you're going to see more and more of that where kids are doing some of each. Like right now, we have students at the high school who are brick and mortar for us, and they go to virtual school as well. So we have that going on right now where we receive funding part, and another district received funding, the virtual funding part. And the communication is back and forth between that district and us on how much we collect.
I have two questions. I guess I'll stick with the financial side of things since that's what we're on first. So if there was an instance, I guess, from my understanding, where we did not use this program, say for like the fall semester, we did not have any students that went that route, what would we owe as that?
We do nothing.
Okay. And then I guess I was wondering if we see this as an opportunity to recapture some students that may have left our district previously, how would we go about doing that without it being like an open enrollment or kind of, I was a bit confused when Dr. McGehee was talking about how this would be like an administrative recommendation for students, like based on suspensions and their circumstances. That I understand, but I'm confused about how these work together.
So I think talking about it tonight is opening the door to that now a little bit, because I know Mr. Burns had some of his teachers come to him and say, hey, you're starting a virtual school. So that's why it's important for us to clearly articulate the purpose of the virtual school and what it's going to be like. And that's why we've worked to make it, to brand it or construct it similarly to Flint Hills Learning Center and how that works. We have kids that request to Mr. Fisher to go to Flint Hills Learning Center, and he denies them because they aren't a good fit or they need to be a brick and mortar school. So we would follow that same process. And that's why I'm saying as we go through this, running this will most likely fall back to the high school in terms of how it's run, because it's, again, we worked with KSAB and asked them questions about how to structure this, and that's why we've structured it underneath Flint Hills Learning Center, so we can practice the same kind of things we do there with this program as well. Does that help? The intent would be to keep our kids brick and mortar and have this as a way to help them if they get to a point where they cannot attend brick and mortar any longer.
It's kind of treated like our tiered interventions, right? At some point, this becomes that intervention that keeps the student involved and connected.
I'm wondering, and I know this goes back to more of the hybrid model, but would these students then be eligible to participate in extracurricular activities?
Yes, they would. So when we get to the point where we talk about the handbook, some of that will be in that handbook that we're working through. And just so you know, we're working on that now with KSDE, trying to work through that and get that handbook in place and also work on our processes. We're going to bring that with us, along with this, but we really don't want to get the horse before the cart on this. And plus, KSDE's been reviewing it and we're still working through that. So that's going to come.
And so would the plan be that these students would do the state assessments?
Yeah.
As like a typical brick and mortar student would?
Yeah, so they have options. Students can take the assessment remotely if they want to, or they can do it brick and mortar wise. So, or they can come on site, and that's, SDAC typically does theirs on site. They go to the places. So if we have our kids and we know who are Emporia kids who want to take a state assessment, we could bring them into Mary Herbert and give them an assessment in one of our classrooms on site.
You use the word want, so is it
Well, I think
elective?
I think SDAC, and again, we haven't really got to that processes pieces yet, but yes, SDAC primarily does theirs on site. The SDAC staff comes here and they bring the kids in and they do it here in Emporia, or they do it at the district where the kids are at. So that would be our preference, is that they do it on site because it's easier. There is another window, like if you think about state assessments, they do have a separate window for remote, but I believe our preference would be to bring them on site. And if they're in Emporia too, we can bring them on site for other things too, because if you look through that, we also need to work on the individual plans of study, which brings up Naviance and the work we do there. Bringing families in on family nights to do that and get that done. So I think there's a lot of on-site opportunities for some of these kids too, to help them. Because on-site I think is important too, to have that mixture. And it's hard if you live in Emporia and your virtual school's in Lawrence. It's hard to be on-site.
Okay, this is an action item, if there's no further questions.
I move to approve the ESDAC Connect MOU for virtual programming as submitted.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
All right, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
That's going to bring us to item 7A, recommendation of audit services agreement.
Who's coming up? Kate? All right, we're going to move now. Now we're moving to the operations part of our meeting. We've been on the teaching and learning portion. Now we're making a shift.
To select a new auditor, and there was a committee that made the recommendation for Gordon CPA to be our fiscal auditor. They have audited the financials and reported back to you for the last 3 years. Part of that agreement was that they could be the auditor as long as the board agreed for 9 years with a renewal every 3 years. So the information you have are their fees for the next 3 years and the agreement for auditing the 25-26 financials. Do you have any questions related to that?
So this would be the end of our first 3 years?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
I'm glad you clarified that, Kate, because you had asked if we should consider, a RFP or anything anytime soon, but it sounds like maybe in 6 years or a little sooner.
Yeah, I would suggest that, we'll have been with this firm for 6 years. At the end of what you're approving this evening, that might be a good time to open it back up, have the committee review what's been going on, see what else comes to the table, and revisit it at that time. It's always good to kind of create an open market and see, it may be that you stay right where you are, but
I would move to approve Gordon CPA LLC to provide annual fiscal auditing services as submitted.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you very much. That's going to bring us to item 7B, facility use agreement between USD253 and ESU.
Mr. Swartz has been working with ESU on this agreement. We've been giving you some information as far as how negotiations were going, and so we have a recommendation for you this evening.
Quick reminder, this was a 10-year agreement. Last time the district would have agreed to go into partnership with Emporia State was 2016. And at that point, there was a significant use of funds for a turf project at Emporia State. And the district hasn't, and that was the first 3 years, I believe, of that agreement. In the last 7, there hasn't been any funds paid to Emporia State for the use of that facility. So what we did to help look at the overall cost was if that money was spread out over 10 years, it was roughly $22,000 a year. And as you look at inflation, that kind of grew to where if that it's close to what the recommendation is, what we've worked out with Emporia State. So the agreement is for $37,500 for 5 years, per year. So a grand total of $37,500 times the 5. We did explore some options to host games at Emporia High School. That is on the potential capital project list, and we even priced bleachers and what that would cost. And as we looked at that option compared to going with the agreement, that's why the recommendation is for this 5-year agreement to give us some time to get that planned out a little more appropriately. So it is only 5 and not 10, those kind of things. So questions?
This was initially a $50,000 per year offer for us to utilize the facility, so a little bit more than twice what we were paying per year for our previous. Even if we wanted to and could and had the funds to do this project, we couldn't do it in the time frame that's needed. And so I think it's prudent for us to buy some time so that we can explore that avenue more. The community's going to have thoughts about whether we play at ESU or whether we play at EHS. There's going to be a lot of people who want to weigh in on that, but I think it's important for us to do our due diligence over the next, say, 12 to 24 months to look at, okay, what all would be needed, and then the longer we would wait to actually start the project, the more it's going to cost, but we at least need to have a plan in place at the end of this 5 years to potentially have the ability to go a different direction.
So we use it, whatever, 4 or 5 home games for football? And then how many track meets?
One track meet. I think there's one
And
high school.
is there
track meet.
anything else that we normally would be using it for?
Not that I am aware of.
Okay.
Those are the two primary uses.
Yeah, I think those are the primary uses listed in the agreement that and you, I mean, you get use of all their facilities and so on. They're doing all the cleanup and things like that. But at the same time, they're running concessions and keeping concessions and so on. So it's not as bad a deal for ESU as sometimes the AD might make it feel to us when we're meeting with them and talking to it about it. But they kind of have us between a rock and a hard place right now. We really don't have, our facility. We have great facilities, but they're not set up and developed to the point to host these football games, which I hope continue. I'm amazed at the crowds we get, and our football team had a little comeback this year, and hopefully they continue to do that. And so we really don't have a lot of options right now, but I want to make sure that you understand that we want to make sure you do have options the next time this comes around.
I know that since I've been on the board, this has come up before, whether we're kind of giving up a home field advantage if we don't get to play at the high school. And it kind of seems like it's a cycle. So I think it's good that we're giving ourselves this time to consider all the options and then make a decision after we've thought about it and kind of tossed around some ideas that potential what it could cost. Is there additional locker rooms in addition to bleachers and what other improvements we might need to make? Yeah. So, okay, this is an action item.
I move to approve the 5-year facility agreement between USD253 and ESU.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you very much. Item 7C, technology purchase for the summer 2026 replacement.
Yep, Director of Information Technology, Paul is going to come up here. And, we said all along that even though we're in cost containment, there's still going to be times when we have to spend money in order to continue to offer the quality education, and this is one of those times.
Thank you. All right. Looking at purchases, these are following some already established system life cycles for equipment in the school district. One of the reasons I'm fond of using a system life cycle, we find the financial predictability. So we can take a large volume, large fleet of equipment, spread that over years and keep those expenditures level. Things that I think really help, mainly because I think it keeps Josh's blood pressure in check. When I don't come in and ask to spend $4 million. It's like, hey, same year, we try to keep it nice and steady. When we establish those system life cycles, we look to replace equipment, hopefully before it fails, primarily because we want instruction to continue in the classroom without waiting for our technology department. I want our classified staff, business department, all those other people to be able to do their jobs without, waiting because something broke and we need to get there. Looking at kind of where we've been the last 3 years, I definitely am starting to see some pieces of these life cycles come together, and we're starting to see that. And we talked about that a little bit when we talked about staffing and not refilling some open positions in our department. And primarily this was from operating with system life cycles where we're not having to constantly run around and try to fix stuff. We can be more proactive. We can make plans about how we want to approach replacing equipment in facilities. And that's just that big labor shift. And you start thinking about what does technology do if we're not constantly panicked and looking for what we're going to put out. I think a great example of that would be work that I've seen Stephanie Murray and Nick Scheck do on our power school. They've been working with nurses to reduce a platform, consolidating what they can do in their jobs inside of power school with some customization. So we've got a lot of tools, and the technology team can help people use them and get more out of them, but we have to have that availability, right? So I'm just really excited to see some of the things the team's been doing because I felt like we haven't been trying to run around. It's really just looking to continue the system life cycles. We did make some modifications. I'll go through those. Some changes based on what we've seen with data, some barriers we're seeing to acquiring equipment, and some cost changes. So in general, across the board, I'm seeing about a 20% increase in hardware costs, which is pretty significant compared to what we've seen in the past, and primarily being driven by shortage in raw materials. So AI and data centers are basically booked out silicone, which is needed to make a lot of the computer parts. There's probably some other global pressures occurring. I'm not going to get into those, but there's been some supply constraints. And that's kind of driving either a large increase in price for equipment or delaying when equipment might show up that we're purchasing today. So some of the significant changes we made. Typically, with 600 staff laptops in use in the school district, we look to replace those every 4 years. That'd be 150, but tonight we're asking to purchase 75. We sort of evaluated that cost increase at 20%, knowing I feel that this is probably a short-term increase. I don't think this is going to be a forever 20% increase. We looked at where are we at with security updates, because like I said, we're getting into these life cycles. We haven't necessarily always been doing them. So a lot of our devices will still continue to receive security updates. We got kind of a large group that was purchased here during COVID. So by doing 75 today, we would take the other 75 I would have normally asked to purchase, and we'll spread that out over some additional years. So again, trying to keep expenses level, and just keeping in mind, I was just kind of had a little sticker shock when I started opening up quotes from vendors. So sat down and made that reduction. We did the same thing, not as much when we thought about desktops. So we have about 1,000 desktops in the school district. So instead of 145, I'm looking to purchase 125. We tend to run those on a 7-year life cycle. Student devices didn't change too much when we look at our 14-inch student devices we use at the high school. Probably the biggest change there to help offset some of that increase was working with Dathan Fisher and Teaching and Learning. Is a touchscreen necessary for what our students are doing? And we felt that at this time, that's a functionality we could reduce, which got us about a $12,000 savings if we were to go that route. And that's that equipment I've listed here as a non-touch for our students at the high school. Did have kind of a later delivery date than I like. We've seen those in August, but again, we're kind of seeing that across the board where people simply don't have them in their warehouses and those parts are kind of laid out there for a while. Probably the most significant change as I worked through this, how can we do things based on what we've seen and how can we save money? K through 5, we've run on a 6-year life cycle. Felt very comfortable. Didn't have to do tons of repairs on a 6-year life cycle with them. I would not like to take them out to 7 years. I do those that are getting there, you're starting to see the failures creep in on them. But what we could do is look at doing K through 4 in a 6-year life cycle. So I wouldn't be coming in and buying a whole grade level. It changes the math a little bit. And then take our 5th grade devices and transition those up to 6th, 7th, and 8th as part of the middle school. So instead of running 3 years at the middle school, they're a little harder on them. We would take ones that were used as 5th grade, still in great shape, and transition those up into the middle school. So we wouldn't buy 6th grade brand new. We'd really be buying 5th grade. We'd have to do a little juggling this year because this would be aimed at going into 5th grade, and then we would take the new devices we bought a year ago and shift those up into 6th grade, and we'd have to shuffle stuff around. But that did save about $17,575 a year, and we felt like that's a change we could make that would not have an impact on instruction. Should be fairly seamless. And we did purchase a lot of tablets previously in last year. So again, evaluating what we were doing there, looking at how JCDC was using them with their software and their applications, and we felt that we could stop, I don't want to say defer. We're just not going to buy tablets, and we're going to use some of those newer ones if we were to need them for various things throughout the district would be the idea. And then coming back next year, we'd look at trying to start that life cycle. They just have a whole lot right new that are brand new. So to start buying those chunks would really eat we just end up having brand new one-year-old devices we're trying to surplus. That just didn't make sense. So still looking to get those in a cleaner system life cycle. Looking for 4 to 5 years out of them again. We have about 400 tablets in the district for various things and looking to keep those in that rotation, but not on this list this year. What did show up that hasn't been there before would be security cameras. So our security camera system has about 470 components between the servers that store the camera footage, the actual cameras themselves, maybe their viewers that are in the offices where you see like the TV and they got the cameras, that's a viewer that runs those. So we're looking to start stepping into that as a life cycle. A lot of that equipment either came in through bond or different projects or wherever it came from. So we're looking to start doing that. There are some pieces there that might be something we could run through a grant, and I will still pursue that, but in this case, we didn't have that in place here, but we would like to, and it's not a very big number because of that. We're doing 30, we're looking for somewhere between 7 to 10 year life cycle depending on the type of equipment. So it's a smaller number than you would do in that life cycle, but it's a great way to start getting those in rotation. We're starting to see some of the cameras that were purchased in 2018 and 2019 will fail. Like we'll run an update and for whatever reason that camera doesn't come back up. Never fun to have to go get a lift to drive it somewhere to replace one camera. So things we're looking at, that brings that in. That was the only piece that didn't come off state contract when I reached out to vendors. Because we're buying, the specific camera we buy is considered kind of like a consumer grade. This is not really something they would carry. We would need to do the AI integrated if you're looking for something on state contract, but that took the price from $214 to $495. So I was like, we have some G3 domes that are like HD. These are 4K, 5K cameras. They look so much clearer. I'm okay if we continue to run on those. So I think the goal is just try to keep things simple, no surprises. If you have any questions about what we have here today, oh, I apologize. There's one item I missed, and I had it in my note. I would like to buy cases again. I did not have quotes back from vendors in time to get them to you last week, but that cost should be so many notes. I believe it was around $15,000 for cases. We would put them on the 500 student devices, and it was just under $30 a device, or $30 a case. Okay, sorry. Questions?
I'll just say, wow, this was a very well thought out, put together presentation, Paul. Like you really made your case. Because it is amazing what can happen and what progress you can make when everything's working like it's supposed to, right? When you're not constantly putting out fires for things. So thank you for making us aware of how much progress your team is making in that regard. I think that's really awesome. If we do move forward with a approval this evening, do we need to modify to include the 15 or just as presented? To add the 15 for the cases?
I mean, when you're saying it's $15,000, I feel like you could literally not wrap it in, and you have the authority to expend up to $20,000 for those cases anyway within board policy.
I just wanted to be transparent on these.
Sure, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think you approached it the right way, but I don't think you have to. My recommendation is you don't have to change what you're doing tonight, and he could still move forward and purchase the cases.
Okay. And there's not a dollar
And
amount
another
in the
transaction.
motion. Since it's listed, I wanted to make sure I asked.
It's just, I want to be clear, we're not doing that to get around anything. It's just, it wasn't prepared and ready to go for tonight, so it'll just end up being a separate transaction under $20,000.
I was going to have a question, but you addressed it. I was wondering how much increase we were seeing with the technology, but I appreciate you already addressing that. But unfortunately, it's the times we live in, so thank you.
Thank you. Again, I move to approve the purchase of the technology equipment for replacement over the summer of 2026 as submitted.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you very much. And that's going to bring us to item AA, board reports.
Okay, I think I'm up first. I don't have mine pulled up. I have my tech college agenda. We met on Monday. We got another really great report on our 2+2 programs and all the different universities in Kansas that we're working with, as well as programs that are on the horizon to increase that and get more students there. Approved a whole bunch of policies, just like we do here. And what was I going to tell you? Oh, they had that brownout. I don't know if anybody heard about that at the tech college. I think it was just last Thursday. And so they did not have, or maybe Tuesday, they did not have power, and they had to turn everything off so it didn't get fried. And they had to do an emergency purchase of a generator. But the big kicker was, I believe they had 16 dental students taking their clinical or their state board exam that day as well, with their testers having flown in from out of state. And they powered through and everybody still passed. So pretty impressive. Still working on our budget, of course. And that was about it.
Thank you. And the Emporia Rec Commission.
Yes, the Emporia Rec Commission actually didn't meet before this meeting. We met before the last one. That said, though, I will tell you, we did have an issue recently with our pool. I think you guys may have read about it or seen it on the news. Locally, there was a system failure, and it caused the pool to close for a couple of days, and it's a really good example of some of the very aging infrastructure that that building and commission has to operate with, and why I would encourage people to be open-minded about voting for the rec center sales tax increase so that we can have facilities that will last the next 50 years or 100 years, right, and invest for our future. And then we are meeting this Monday at 5:30. So the next meeting, I'll have a real update.
And Insurance Committee.
Do you want to go? Yep, yeah, I couldn't recall if you were there. Oh, that's right, okay. We've been together for so long, yeah. No, Insurance Committee met. I was able to join remotely on a day, I think I was in Topeka, and IMA did a really good presentation. There was a PowerPoint that they presented and walked through during the meeting. I don't think it's present on our board docs, but email Josh for it, and he can send that to you. So that's really just worth sitting down and reading and looking through. You know, it's kind of what you would normally expect. The cost of insurance is projected to go up. We do think we're probably going to have a lower increase, though, comparative to if we weren't full funded, self-funded. And then I think some of the costs that we've had to really be able to evaluate, you know, the money in, money out, and financial stability of the plan. I think there's going to be a certain point in the year where some of the rebates, I believe, for the pharmaceutical stuff go through. So some of your pharmacy expenses don't exactly settle, right, until later in those rebates process. There was discussion, and this really happens at most insurance committee meetings, depending on the topic, about moving to the state of Kansas state employee health insurance plan, which I'm on through my work. But I think the reality is it would be expensive, and it also, it would be more expensive. It also requires, I believe, us to do like a 3-year commitment, right? You can't just join and then after a year or two say, okay, we're out. There is actually a fixed commitment that you have to be in it. I'd encourage you to review that PowerPoint. It's going to tell you more information than I can condense here. But that is what I have for Insurance Committee, unless Josh wants to add anything.
Okay, thank you very much. That's going to move us to 8B, Board Policy Update, first reading.
Ms. Leeds is going to actually take this one. Dr. Mickelson graciously asked if she could attend her daughter's first softball game tonight, and I said, of course you can. I think Cheryl can handle this one.
The first one is IIBGC, Staff Online Activities. And what this is, the new addition is that it prohibits it has prohibitions regarding social media platforms. No employee of the district shall privately or directly communicate with any students through a social media platform, except as expressly permitted under this policy. It applies, this applies regardless of whether the communication occurs during or outside of school hours. You cannot, as an employee, cannot require students to use social media platforms for an assignment or extracurricular activity. They have to, as an employee, you would need to register, for lack of a better term, the platform with Lindell here at central office so that he could oversee it. That's for all of the Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikToks, X or Twitter, any of those platforms. What it's trying to do is to limit the connectivity of people being able to get in and communicate with our kids. What it would be is one of the examples that one of the people on the policy committee talked about was she has a child who is in band, and the band has people who follow, but they don't follow anybody except for another school entity. So it's just school entity communicating with each other. No one outside can communicate with our kids and post things so that they can't reach our kids. But in the developing of this policy, we became aware of some accounts that we need to tighten up. So Lindell will be working with building administration on that. Casey, did I miss anything on that? Okay. Any questions on this policy?
So I notice at the bottom of it, it says KSB recommendation, so I assume it's also passed through their legal department or whatever?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess I have a question. So this would mean like a certain teacher could not set up a Facebook group for the parents of her students. Instead, they would go through platforms that we already have in place.
Yes. They can, if they register, if they let Lindell know that they've got that, and he becomes kind of a manager, account monitor, they could allow people to join and follow, but the Facebook or account can't follow them, so that it doesn't pop up what they're posting onto ours. Because inadvertently things pop up that other people believe or are interested in that we don't want our children to be. So.
At least we shouldn't be the avenue for it.
Yeah. Any other questions about this policy? Okay, the next policy is JCDC, and this is the cell phone, the law that Governor Kelly voted in. This is for the use and storage of personal electronic devices by students in classrooms in the school day. It limits them having access to their devices within the school day. They would need to have a way to lock it, and we're looking into getting some pouches where they would put it in at the beginning of the day when the bell rings, and they would not have access to it until the end of the day when the bell rings, and then they could access it. And this would be for all students, some sort of locking device. If a student has a medical need, such as a student who has diabetes that has their blood sugar monitor that goes through their phone, they would have a different type of bag, but they would have access to it to monitor their blood sugar. But it would be very noticeable if someone opened it up and you could hear it. In this, you would be limiting or recommending to limit, on the second page of this, it says use during school-sponsored activities before or after school. And this would be things like going to a basketball game, football game, track meet, things like that. We could give the coaches or the building administration, you would be giving them the latitude to say, yes, you may use it as long as it is not abused. If there became a problem, the administration could say, no, you can't have access during that time. If a high school student is taking a class at the tech college and they're leaving the building, they would go through the office to check out like they normally do. They sign out. They would have a unlocking device. They would unlock it and they would go on out and have access to their cell phones. If the student leaves for lunch during open lunch, they would not be able to unlock and take it because that is considered between the bells. So our suggestion is they would leave it in their car. Let's see. Could not have it out in the hall. Could not have it out in the restroom. Can't have it out during the lunchtime. I mean, it's not that we're prohibiting the use, we're just the access to. It's to create that non-distraction environment that we need our students to be in. We would have some discipline type policies in place so that if a student had their cell phone out during a regulated time, that there would be a consequence. So I think those are, the only other recommendation is that the committee recommended that we date this May instead of April. Do you have any questions?
I'm trying to get my head around what this looks like. I mean, it says bag. And so does that mean there's actually like a little bag the kids carry around with them through the day?
It's a little pouch about so big.
Okay.
I have been working with 2 different vendors, and I've narrowed it down, I think, to 1. It has the little pin in it like your anti-theft at stores. And it has a pin that goes in and locks, and you touch it and it unlocks and opens, and it's about so big, and you can drop your cell phone in. It also you have to put your smartwatches, you have to put your earbuds in. It locks, you put it into your bag, and it stays in there. Administration would do some spot checks. Teachers could spot check and say, hey, where are your pouches? Do you have them? Is your cell phone in it? You don't have your bag? Where's your bag? It's in my car. Where's your cell phone? It's in my car. Then that's where we would go.
So I guess my follow-up question is, can the students unlock at any time, or is there like a master lock in the building or something that causes it to unlock at the end of the school day?
She's getting into
Let me just say,
she's getting into next month's
She's getting
presentation,
into
but that's
next
okay.
month's
That's
presentation.
okay.
I was envisioning a wall of phones.
No.
Like, I thought they had to, I told them on Friday, I thought that meant like everyone would, like when you, like a pegboard, like everybody's phone would be hung up on the pegboard.
Kinda
And then
like
they
a
got it at
mailbox.
the end of the day, like, I don't know what I thought, but it wasn't this.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking,
But-
surely there's an app, and the
Yes.
whole school can just be unlocked at the same time and locked at
Nope.
the same time.
Nope. And
It's a physical device.
yeah.
Okay,
And
that's,
they'll be up and accessible as kids leave the building, where they, and the companies that we work with will help us determine, how many of those is typical for our school site, where should they be located. You might have some portable stations that you decide, well, here's a hot spot because there are a lot of kids going out toward the football field tonight for some reason, or the soccer field tonight for some reason, so you could put it there so that they could just get it. So, but we do plan, we'll continue to answer all your questions tonight, but we do plan to have an extensive presentation next month on all the procedural things, have the bag so that you can see it, all of that, before you're actually, and that would occur along with an action item to actually purchase the supplies and materials that are going to be required to meet this state law. And then after you are comfortable with the procedures and you've got it all figured out, you'll have your second read on the policy and get to vote on that.
Well, thank you so much. Just to help
Absolutely.
me start getting my head around this.
Well, and I took Mr. Baumort and Mr. Sargent from the middle school and high school down to Arc City High School, and we observed their use of the bags dismissal, and it was slick. They said, the first day it took maybe 4 minutes to get the kids out of the building. It didn't take 4 minutes for them to leave the building. Granted, it was a Friday, but it didn't take, you know how long it takes for the kids to leave. It didn't slow them down a bit leaving the building. I reached out to the sales rep, the account rep. This company provides professional development. It provides communication, logistics type things that I'll be hooking them up with Lindell. I reached out to her and asked her, could we please have one of their implementation coaches come out before the next meeting to actually, hopefully, get in next week to kind of see where the kids go so that they can get eyes on how many magnets or devices you would need in each spot. What they do is you put it it's in like the key lock boxes on the side of the buildings for the emergency responders, and it's locked. Security would go around and unlock it and open it up at the very end of the day. Kids would unlock, it would lock back up. Anytime they leave through the office, there would be a device there that they would click out. So the numbers that Arc City was showing, it is showing good things. They said their graduation rate is up, their grades are up, their attendance has gotten better because the social, emotional type things that were going on before aren't. It's just, we hate that it came down to this to make it happen, but.
So I have a question, because I want to make sure I understand, like Barb was saying, how this would functionally work. What I'm hearing is I'm envisioning that there's going to be these little baggies. They put their cell phone in the bag, it locks, but they carry it with them throughout the day between classes. Okay. And here's kind of my concern with that. I agree that that should be enough. That is reasonable. But when you look at the bill text, House Bill 2299, and when you look at our policy, even our policy kind of uses the same language. Let me see it here. All student personal electronic communication devices shall be powered off and securely stored away from the student's person in an inaccessible location during the day. So, put my lawyer mind to it. Away from the person means away from your body, and it means inaccessible. And if it's next to your chair in a bag, I don't think it's actually inaccessible and it's not away from your body. And I agree that that should be enough, but I am cognizant that you may have a political actor at some point in the future try to make an example out of a school. So that kind of makes me a little nervous. And I get that our legislators, I've kind of heard some commentary on this, that a lot of them, when they've been approached about this after passing it, were like, oh, well, we didn't think of that. But I've also seen the legislature have a committee about making a certain type of administrative appeal required in every case, have a bill title with that intention, and then not include that process in the language of what they pass. So it doesn't surprise me that they're not thinking ahead. But I don't think what we're describing actually is what the law says. It should be enough. I don't think that's what it says.
Device locks it down. You can't get it open unless you just tear it apart. And then there would be disciplinary actions for destruction of property, that kind of thing. It would be in their bag, away from them. So.
The bag is accessible, but the phone is not. And we talked to the vendors about this, and they are in other states where the law is even more restrictive language than there is here in Kansas, and have not had, it's passed the muster. I agree with you. I had this similar concerns, but I also know leadership in the state, USA Kansas leadership's been working with the legislators to look at even coming back and revising the language a year from now, so that there is no question that this would suffice. But this is really the only feasible approach that we see to addressing a problem that was forced upon us. Honestly, you didn't need a law to do this. We could have, I mean, they could have passed a law, bell to bell, no cell phones. We could have accommodated that without all these bags and everything else. But because of that word inaccessible, but I do understand your concerns.
Yeah, and I'm mostly just saying that to put a marker in the sand later, so I can say, hey, we pointed this out, guys, this was an issue, but we're doing the best we can with what we have. I'm not going to vote against it, but I just question if that, well, when we get to it, but I'd be remiss not to point that out.
And the pouches are going to be for the middle school, high school. The elementary, we're going to go a little different approach because they go into a classroom and stay in that classroom. It would be much harder to manage the middle school, high school, where they're moving room to room. So we're going to have a little different practice for the elementary than a pouch. So, but we do have a lot of elementary kids who have cell phones.
Yeah, in an elementary classroom, it could be as simple as, I mean, they make them for cell phones, but you envision a shoe bag, right, that is hung on the wall. All the kids are going to drop it in there. Then the teacher's going to, in order so it's locked away and inaccessible, put it in a locked cabinet and then get it back out at the end of the day. That's what we're thinking right now. But again, we got 2 or 3 weeks to massage it a little bit, and then you'll hear all this again. As we gear toward trying to nail down exactly what do we need to purchase to be able to implement this.
I have a question, but also a thought about for the next presentation about this. I know that there's been some reports about like you can buy the thingy to unlock them, like they sell those on Amazon, and how the company that we're considering purchasing from would suggest that we address that. I think that there's any one of us probably has already thought of this, especially if you are working with teenagers. They're going to put other things in the pouch that are phone shaped but are not a phone. And I wonder if the discipline procedure in this policy is suitable to address such circumstances. I think also in this point is and I know I went to the KSB day in Topeka where we talked extensively about this, is that this isn't really up to us. The legislature has taken this out of our hands. And I think that's important for the community to understand too, that we can talk about the procedure and how we want to do things in Emporia, but ultimately we have to come up with something. We weren't given a choice.
Exactly. Yeah, and the company does have some suggestions. And, it all boils down to, the adults enforcing and having those consequences listed. So, and Arc City kind of gave us some ideas of how they handle, okay, power your phone off, you put it in your pouch. That's just how they start their first block. It's just everybody puts it in, they show that it's locked, they turn it upside down, shake it, put it in their bag, and it's there. So.
Yeah, we need to have the board, do the governance side of things and get the policy in place so that then we can implement the procedures, and those procedures would be a part of that student code of conduct. There's going to be a cell phone section and kind of consequences and what occur. And yeah, if someone puts a rock in their pouch and then later on their phone is out or whatever, you just have to treat it like every other violation, as a consequence. And I thought the information from Arc City was good in that they had quite a few violations initially, but they were down to, less than one a day kind of a situation in their whole school district by the time Cheryl had gone down to meet with them.
Yeah, they started out with 3.5 referrals per day. The bulk of them being one-time violators, and then they didn't repeat. There were a few that repeated, but not many. They were below one referral a day until the day before I got there, and then it went up to 1.1. So they're very happy with. They said, and we walked the halls, and the kids, they didn't have. You didn't see this. And they were engaged in conversation in classes, and
The other component that's going to be important is for us to, communicate expectations with our staff and all of us, right? Like I now try to make sure when I'm walking classrooms and schools that kids don't see my cell phone, and as to the extent possible, unless it's absolutely necessary for the work you're doing or the job you have in front of you, our staff shouldn't be getting their cell phones out in front of students either. We're not going to lock their cell phones away. They're adults, and they may need them for a work purpose at some point. But that's going to be a part of it too. It's just that communication of expectation for all of us as adults.
So I'm pretty naive when it comes to this whole thing, but one question I have is, how are the bags unlocked? I mean, what's it?
It's magnetic.
Okay.
It's like
And who has the magnet?
they'll be on the wall by the opening, by the doors.
By the exits type
Yeah,
thing?
or
Okay.
there will be one in the office that they can.
And that's what
when
it
they check
takes
out.
to get it,
Mhm.
okay.
But they won't be accessible through the day.
No. And I'll
Those
have
magnets will only
the
be
bags.
accessible when it's time to leave.
All right, so I'm getting nip. But what if a child has to leave early, but they'll is there a way?
They can roll through the office and
And
there's
have it
there'll
done.
be a
Yep.
magnet there, yep.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
There will be one of those at the front desk. You have to check out anyway. You have to sign out, so it'll just be right next to it.
I'm sorry, one more question.
Sure.
Do they take the bags home at night?
The high school, middle school will take
And
them
so
home.
then if they forget to bring their bag back the
They
next
have to
day?
check one out in the office.
Okay, so there'll be extras in case.
Yep. And then they will have to turn it back in at the end of the day.
And at some point, it would become an issue of you just need to turn your phone in
Yeah.
to the office. If you're going to use that as your excuse every day, I didn't bring the bag, well, we're not going to keep giving you another bag every day.
Yeah. You've done this before, haven't you, Ms. Fowler?
Okay, thank you for that first read.
First read, thank you.
And that's going to bring us to 9A, Superintendent Report.
I think we thoroughly covered cell phones. I can probably buzz right over that one, other than to continue to stipulate the fact that it is an unfunded mandate that has been handed down from the state. I think that this could have been implemented by school districts without any additional expenditures with the right language in law. But here we are, and we will do our best to accommodate it. But we're in the middle of cost containment, and yet we're going to spend upwards of more than it costs to pay an educator over the course of a year to buy the supplies and equipment that is required to make this work. Wanted to give a quick little cost containment update. Everybody's tired of hearing the word, I know, lots of months of cost containment. But one of those goals was that empathy goal, we weren't using the word attrition, we were using that word empathy. Barb doesn't like that word attrition. It has some bad meaning for her in the past, and I appreciate that. And empathy is much better anyway. But we were trying to make sure that our folks that want to work in Emporia Public Schools could work in Emporia Public Schools, and I'm happy to say that we've been able to meet that goal. And we actually even have openings where we have job postings at this current time. So we've had more retirements and resignations than more than enough to reduce the staffing in the areas that we needed to and not have to do any kind of reduction in force. So that is very good news. I also wanted, there's been some questions about class sizes and sections at particular schools across the district. I just want to reiterate that we haven't made any final decisions about how many sections of third grade there will be at a certain school or fourth grade at another school. I listed the guidelines that the cost containment team utilized in being able to become a little bit more efficient. I didn't put the old guidelines there, but pre-K 3-year-old, pre-K 4-year-old were the same. K2 was 18, so now it's 18 to 20. 3 through 5 was 22, now it's 22 to 25 to get a little bit of leadway. 6 through 8 was 25, it's 23 to 27. 9 through 12 was actually, for some reason, 22, and we bumped that to the 24 to 30. The goal isn't to have 30 kids in every class. The goal is to have 24 kids in the class, but that gives us some flexibility to be as efficient as we can and stay within our financial means as possible. But, you know, we've been communicating the whole time, particularly with elementary sections, that, you know, it might come to a point over the course of the summer where we identify based on enrollment, we need a teacher in one school where we don't need them in another school. We'll work with staff to make those kinds of things happen. The goal is not to go into the school year overstaffed, but to try to be staffed just right. And, you know, I think ideally we would have those decisions made at the latest by August 1st on those sections. But you could have something occur late to where all of a sudden you got 30 kids in all these third grade classes in this school, and you don't have anywhere to pull someone from, and you have to hire a teacher. But fortunately, because you have more kids, you'll have a little bit more funding as well. So it's going to be a kind of a revolving target there. And then finally, just a reminder, our 2026 graduation coming up this Sunday, May 17th at 3 p.m., William Lindsay White Civic Auditorium. And we can't remind ourselves what time to be there enough, right? So I put it in there again. Board members are asked to be there by 2:30. For some reason, they want me there by 2:15. They think I'm a slow learner or something, or I get dressed slower. I'm not sure. And then the last day of school, which snuck up on me. I don't know if it snuck up on you. Probably the teachers are thinking, when in the world is the last day of school going to be? But snuck up on me. Thursday, May 21st, and that'll be a half day. It'll run, you know, we did have the missed day of inclement weather, and so we moved from the 20th to the 21st, so the 21st just looks exactly like the 20th would have looked prior to that.
Okay, thank you very much. And future board calendar dates, item 10A. We just talked about graduation this Sunday. Our first meeting in June will be Wednesday, June 10th here at Mary Herbert. And then we will have a retreat on June 15th and June 16th, which will be held at the Technical College. And now I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Please cast your vote.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you very much.